Hello, bookworms. Welcome back to the Bonified Bookworm. And if you're here to read along with me and improve your English. Because I used to say learn English, but I think you need to be pretty advanced to read along, probably. So I wanted to mention this week is the Amazon book sale. It runs the 15th through the 20th of May. Some of their books are up to 80% off. I haven't really had a chance to look at it too much, but I definitely am because I love books. So I don't have a review today. I just wanted to mention that. I'll have a review probably next video. I blanked. Okay, so we're going to jump into Touching the Void by Joe Simpson, and we left off on page 72. And basically he has, yeah, okay, the top of 73 is where we left off. It sounds like he's broken his leg, or possibly his shin and his knee. I don't know. Can you break a knee? Do knees break? I guess they do, because that's what they say, like, you know, mafia people. Break your knees, break your kneecaps, or something like that. So anyway, top of page 73, Touching the Void, Joe Simpson. Oddly enough, looking at it seemed to help. I felt detached from it. He was just trying to move along, and then he fell more, and it like shoved back up into his leg, his bones that have broken. So, all right. Oddly enough, looking at it seemed to help. I felt detached from it, as if I were making a clinical observation of someone else. I moved the knee gingerly, experimenting with it. I tried to bend it and stopped immediately, gasping at the rush of pain. When it moved, I felt a grinding crunch. Bone had moved, and a lot more besides. At least it wasn't an open fracture. I knew this as soon as I tried to move. I could feel no wetness, no blood. I reached down and caressed the knee with my right hand, trying to ignore the stabs of fire so that I could feel it with enough force to be certain I wasn't bleeding. It was in one solid piece, but it felt huge and twisted and not mine. The pain kept flooding round it, pouring on fire, as if that might cure it, then and there. With a groan, I squeezed my eyes tight shut. Hot tears filled my eyes and my contact lenses swam in them. I squeezed tight again and felt hot drops rolling over my face. It wasn't the pain. I felt sorry for myself, childishly so, and with that thought, I couldn't help the tears. Dying had seemed so far away, and yet now everything was tinged with it. I shook my head to stop the tears, but the taint was still there. I dug my axes into the snow and pounded my good leg deeply into the soft slope until I felt sure it wouldn't slip. The effort brought back the nausea, and I felt my head spin giddily to the point of fainting. I moved, and a searing spasm of pain cleared away the faintness. I could see the summit of Sierra Norte away to the west. I was not far below it. The sight drove home how desperately things had changed. We were above 19,000 feet, still on the ridge and very much alone. I looked south at the small rise I had hoped to scale quickly, and it seemed to grow with every second that I stared. I would never get over it. Simon would not be able to get me up it. He would leave me. He had no choice. I held my breath, thinking about it. Left here, alone. I felt cold at the thought. I remembered Rob, who had been left to die. But Rob had been unconscious, had been dying. I had only a bad leg, nothing to kill me. For an age, I felt overwhelmed at the notion of being left. I felt like screaming. I felt like swearing, but stayed silent. If I said a word, I would panic. I could feel myself teetering on the edge of it. The rope, which had been tight on my harness, went slack. Simon was coming. He must know something had happened, I thought, but what shall I tell him? If I told him that I had only hurt my leg and not broken it, would that make him help me? My mind raced at the prospect of telling him that I was hurt. I pressed my face into the cold snow again and tried to think calmly. I had to cool it. If he saw me panicky and hysterical, he might give up at once. I fought to stem my fears, but Be rational about it, I thought. I felt myself calm down, and my breathing became steady. Even the pain seemed tolerable. What happened? Are you okay? I looked up in surprise. I hadn't heard his approach. He stood at the top of the cliff looking down at me, puzzled. I made an effort to walk normally, as if nothing had happened. I fell. The edge gave way. I paused. Then I said, as unemotionally as I could, I've broken my leg. His expression changed instantly. I could see a whole range of reactions in his face. I kept looking directly at him. I wanted to miss nothing. Are you sure it's broken? Yes. He stared at me. It seemed that he looked harder and longer than he should have done because he turned away sharply. Not sharply enough, though. I had seen the look come across his face briefly, but in that instant, I knew his thoughts. He had an odd air of detachment. I felt unnerved by it, felt suddenly quite different from him, alienated. His eyes had been full of thoughts, pity and something else, a distance given to a wounded animal which could not be helped. He had tried to hide it, but I had seen in, and I looked away, full of dread and worry. Olive sailed down to you. He had his back to me, bending over a snow stake, digging down through the soft snow. He sounded matter-of-fact, and I wondered whether I was being unduly paranoid. I waited for him to say more, but he remained silent, and I wondered what he was thinking. A short but very dangerous abseil from a poorly anchored snow stake put him down next to me quickly. He stood close by me and said nothing. I had seen him glance at my leg, but he made no comment. After some searching, he found a packet of paracetamols and handed me 2 pills. I swallowed them and watched him trying to pull the abseil rope down. It refused to move. It had jammed in the snow bollard that he had dug around the snow stake above. Simon swore and set off towards the point where the wall was smallest, right on the crest of the ridge. I knew it was all unstable powder, and so did he, but he had no choice. I looked away, unwilling to watch what I was sure would be a fatal fall down the west face. Indirectly, it would kill me as well, only a little more slowly. Simon had said nothing about what he would do, and I had been nervous to prompt him. In an instant, an uncrossable gap had come between us, and we were no longer a team working together. Joe had disappeared behind a rise on the ridge and began moving faster than I could go. I was glad we had put the steep section behind us at last. I had felt so close to the end of everything on that ridge, falling all the time and always on the very edge of the west face. I felt tired and was grateful to be able to follow Joe's tracks instead of breaking trail. I rested a while when I saw that Joe had stopped moving. Obviously, he had found an obstacle, and I thought I would wait until he started moving again. When the rope moved again, I trudged forward after it slowly. Suddenly, there was a sharp tug as the rope lashed out, taut against the slope. I was pulled forward several feet as I pushed my axes into the snow and braced myself for another jerk. Nothing happened. I knew that Joe had fallen, but I couldn't see him, so I stayed put. I waited for about 10 minutes until the tauted rope went slack on the snow, and I felt sure that Joe had got his weight off me. I began to move along his footsteps, cautiously, half expecting something else to happen. I kept tensed up and ready to dig my axes in at the first sign of trouble. As I crested the rise, I could see down a slope to where the rope disappeared over the edge of a drop. I approached slowly, wondering what had happened. When I reached the top of the drop, I saw Joe below me. He had one foot dug in and was leaning against the slope with his face buried in the snow. I asked him what had happened, and he looked at me in surprise. I knew he was injured, but the significance didn't hit me at first. He told me very calmly that he had broken his leg. He looked pathetic, and my immediate thought came without any emotion. "You're fucked, matey. You're dead. No 2 ways about it." I think he knew it too. I could see it in his face. It was all totally rational. I knew where we were. I took in everything around me instantly and knew he was dead. It never occurred to me that I might also die. I accepted without question that I could get off the mountain alone. I had no doubt about that. I saw what Joe had tried to do and realized that unless I could arrange an abseil, I would have to do the same. The snow at the top of the cliff was horrendous, sugary stuff. I dug as much of the surface away as I could and then buried a snow stake in the mush I had uncovered. I felt sure it would never hold my weight, so I started digging a wide snow bollard around the stake. When I finished, I backed towards the cliff edge and tugged the rope. It held firm, but I had no confidence in it. I thought of trying to back climb the crest of the ridge where the cliff was smallest, but decided it would be even more dangerous. I half abseiled and half climbed down the cliff, trying to get my weight off the rope. I felt it cutting through the bollard. It held firm. When I reached the foot of the cliff, I saw that Joe's leg was in a bad way and that he was suffering. He seemed calm, but had a sort of He seemed calm, but had a sort of hunted, fearful look in his eyes. He knew the score as well as I did. I gave him some pills for the pain, but knew they were not strong enough to help much. His leg was twisted and misshapen at the knee joint, and I thought that if I could see that through his thick polar fiber trousers, then it must be really bad. I was at a loss for something to say. The change in our fortunes was too abrupt. I found that the ropes had jammed and knew I would have to go back up, alone, to free them. In a way, it took my mind off things and gave me time to settle into the new situation. I had to solo back up the cliff, and the only way was right on the crest of the ridge. I was frightened of attempting it. Joe tried moving beside me and very nearly fell off. I grabbed him and put him back into place. He stayed silent. He had unroped, so I had been able to arrange the abseil, and I think he was quiet because he knew that if I hadn't grabbed him, he would have fallen the length of the east face. I left him then and forgot about him. The climb up the edge of the cliff was the hardest and most dangerous thing I'd ever done. Several times my leg broke through the powder into space. When I was halfway up, I realized I couldn't go back, but I didn't think I would get up it. I seemed to be climbing on nothing. Everything I touched simply broke away. Every step either sank back, collapsed, or crumbled down the west face. But incredibly, I seemed to be gaining height. I don't know how long it took. It felt like hours. When eventually I pulled myself onto the slope above, I was shaking and so strung out that I had to stop still and calm myself. I looked back and was amazed to see that Joe had started traversing away from the cliff. He was trying to help himself by contouring around the small rise in front of him. He moved so slowly, planting his axes in deeply until his arms were buried, and then making a frightening little hop sideways. He shuffled across the slope, head down, completely enclosed in his own private struggle. Below him, I could see thousands of feet of open face falling into the eastern glacier bay. I watched him quite dispassionately. I couldn't help him, and it occurred to me that in all likelihood he would fall to his death. I wasn't disturbed by the thought. In a way, I hoped he would fall. I knew I couldn't leave him while he was still fighting for it, but I had no idea how I might help him. I could get down. If I tried to get him down, I might die with him. It didn't frighten me. It just seemed a waste. It would be pointless. I kept staring at him, expecting him to fall. After a long wait, I turned and went up to the snow stake. I rearranged the stake and then backed down to the cliff edge. I prayed it would hold me, and when I touched down on the slope below, prayed again that it wouldn't jam. I had no intention of repeating the climb up the crest. The rope slid down easily, and I turned with it, half expecting to see that Joe had gone. He was still climbing away from me, and all the time it had taken me to get up and down, he had covered only 100 feet. I started after him. All right, we're stopping on page 78. Yeah, I kind of expected Simon to get hurt because he seemed the more carefree of the two of them, so I'm a little surprised that it's Joe that's hurt. So, hope you all have a great day or evening or whatever time it is when you watch this, and I'll get this posted. Hope to see you next time. Bye.